So this is, I mean, this, to summarize, to pull it all together, because it is now Tanis Esther, right?
Yeah, not yet, a couple hours.
It's already it's already
Oh,
Gimel.
right. Oh, that's right.
It's nighttime. We're just not fasting yet.
That's right.
Right. But I will talk faster.
No,
The,
back up slow,
yeah.
much slower.
But if I can talk faster. But the basic idea is like this. So just very very short recapping of what we set up until now. There's a lot of inyanim. As I pointed out before, this is a fantastic proof of Torah because everything comes together in this Chag, this holiday. It's like all wrapped up. And Hanukkah also is like the next expression of this idea, which we'll get to later on. But the gematrias and the concepts and the ideas and how it all works together with the four osios of Hashem's name and the four mitzvahs, like conceptually, it's all just like perfectly integrated as one system. And it is absolutely a pleasure each year to get into it, to talk about it, and to focus on what's going on. But just the basic idea, right? And the Mishkan is like the organizing factor. You can use the Mishkan as the organizing factor because we saw that Yaakov Avinu, right, when he wanted to reveal Ketz Yamim, couldn't do it, right? The Shekhinah left him. Not just the Nevuah left him, but the Shekhinah left him. Thank you very much. Right? And he recognized there was something missing from the Jewish people, from Klal Yisrael, so he questioned them. Right? And of course they came back and they said Shema, and as the Gemara explains, Shema means that just like God is one in your heart, so is God is one in our heart. And the same thing is true that Yaakov came back and he said Baruch Shem Kavod Mechsam Ve'ed, but from the Gemara, since everything is okay, it's not. The Zohar explains only 24 letters in Baruch Shem Kavod Machuso Roshi Tevis, of which is B'Shem Lamed Vav. Right, you take the first letter of each of those 6 words. You get B'Shem Lamed Vav, because in Shem Lamed Vav, of course, is always an allusion to the Or HaGanuz, the light with which Hashem made creation. And that's the light that shines in Purim time as well. Shechem is where everything went wrong. Shechem is the makam muchen lepurinot, is the place that's set aside for punishment, which can mean one thing and one thing only, a division in Hashem's name, because that's either have the shlemus of Hashem's name or the division. As long as there's shlemus of Hashem's name, there's going to be peace. There's going to be closeness between the Jewish people and Hashem, and there's no enemies. There's no evil people. No one can touch us. We're above that. We're beyond that. You can only have vulnerability to attack to Amalek, to anything in this world that can be negative for Torah and the Jewish people when you have a division in Hashem's name. And therefore, Kosh Baruch Hu Hashgacha is not recognizable. The whole Megillah, the Megillah itself it's Sefer Hashgacha Pratis. That's what it is. It's allowing you to see how Hashem runs history from behind the scenes. Even though it's not mentioning His name, and we talk about it in terms of Hester Panim, one of the reasons it doesn't mention His name in a sense is because he's showing it through His eyes. Like, I did this, I did that, as opposed to talking third person about Hashem like we normally do in the Torah very often. So basically, the whole first part of the story is ludicrous. It's ridiculous because it's basically Hashem setting everything up, all the different facts and facets and details of the story, things that look like they're going to be negative that result later on the positive things. I mean, just the very fact that you can become queen of a massive country, a massive empire like Persia, and nobody knows the country from which you came, your birthplace, and nobody bothered to ask that question or to check it out. You cannot become anything in a president's or prime minister's cabinet, in a head of state, without a thorough investigation. I mean, half these guys drop out of politics in the end because all the dirt that's dug up on them, because everyone just investigates and investigates and investigates every last detail. No stones left unturned. The fact that she could become queen amongst all this was going on, and he controls so much, and that no one bothers to ask that question, and that the whole story revolves around that. Because if it had been revealed, but that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. Look at all the controversy. That's the proof. It's Mishamayim, because it doesn't usually happen otherwise. Right? That's the fact that Kosh Baruch Hu put him in office because of the fact that He wanted him there for whatever reason, for whatever role He's going to play. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. A normal election, he would have got blocked at some point in time. That's what happened. Dukakis was somebody, no, or who was it? Somebody. Remember, they started digging things up, and things came out. Eventually, he just
Edwards.
Edwards. No, that was much later on.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. The point is that it's a bizarre twist of events, because you see later on
that had Haman known that Esther was a Yehudi, right, Yehudia, if he had known that she was Jewish, he may have still tried to exterminate the Jewish people. I mean, certainly if Kosh Baruch Hu wants it to happen, it's going to happen. But he would have been more clever about it. Would have done it in a way that somehow, or sabotaged Esther along the way. He would have had to deal with the issue. The fact that he had no idea and that he should know with all this going on, all these planning, and that, plus the fact that probably had signs that she was Jewish, it's very hard to, when you're secular, even then it's hard to hide your Jewishness when you're in the public eye. Somebody finds out somewhere. How much more so when you're from? And she's from. I mean, she's a from Jew. She's someone who's totally committed to Torah mitzvahs is going to show up somewhere. Fine, so she's not putting tefillin. And other mitzvahs that might be physically noticeable, but her laws of eating, nobody asked the question, no one raised the issue. And later on the story depends upon this because later on, when she says that someone's trying to kill my people, even then Haman doesn't get what's going on. And when she reveals the specific point, the whole thing falls on that point. Because she, I can't believe it. The very people I've been trying to exterminate the entire time from the king. Turns out that the queen belongs to that people. And he's finished, just like that. So the whole story basically is trying to reveal to us the inner workings of Hashgacha Pratis. That's what the Megillah is about. That's what the story is about. How to go from the 20 to the 50 and really ultimately to the 70. That's the point. The goal, we've been speaking about the 20 in terms of representing intellectual blindness, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that or spiritual blindness, a limitation in one's ability to see Hashgacha Pratis. Everything comes down to. It's all about being able to understand and work with the Hashgacha Pratis. There is nothing else in life but that. How we act, how we behave, determines to what level, to what degree we're real with the Hashgacha Pratis. And to the extent that we're real with the Hashgacha Pratis is the extent that we're either Kiddush Hashem or Chilul Hashem. Because you can see, it all comes down to either you're consistent with the values of Torah or you're inconsistent with the values of Torah. And people see the hypocrisy and they pick on things like that. You can talk about Bitachon Amunah all you want. But the moment you act in a way that shows a lack of Bitachon Amunah, so then basically it makes the Torah look like it's false because you're not real with these ideas. Kiddush Hashem basically is that we act in a way that even if we cannot make miracles happen, to prove that God is alive and well and involved in history, which of course is very often the case until Mashiach comes, the very fact that we're willing to go down with that belief and act consistent with it, even without the results being what we might want them to be ideally, is a Kiddush Hashem. We've done the best we can do. You can't do more than that. So the whole story of Purim is about being real with Hashgacha Pratis, and Mordechai was the only one. He was the only one. So that's why 70, first to start off, it is amazing Hashgacha Pratis itself, the fact that Parshas Kisisa, which is not a parsha normally associated with the holiday of Purim, should literally come at the same time. Parshas Tetzaveh is also connected in terms of Parshas Zachor, but Parshas Kisisa, this is where it all emanates from, because in this week's parsha we have Parshas Shkalim, which we skip before Rosh Chodesh Adar because of the whole mitzvah of Machzor Shekel, but this is the parsha that preempted Haman's attack. The Gemara says, right? Haman bought the right to destroy the Jewish people with 10,000 kikar kesef. As the Gemara points out, the Chetzi Shekel given in this week's parsha, the Machzor Shekel, is all about Kishecha B'Leivachad, that represent the idea that the Jewish people are interdependent one another, because that unity is tied to the Nun Sharibin, as we spoke about before. And Haman was stopped in his plan because we gave Machzor Shekel this week's parsha. The Egel Zahav in this week's parsha is what turned everything upside down, right? As we said before, Purim is not what people think. People think that Purim turns things upside down. Purim does not turn things upside down. Purim turns things right side up, right? Because if you look in Parshas V'Hibon, the Parshas Holosecha, right? You've got three sections. You've got the first part. They've got V'Hibon Soa, and they travel the journey, right? And you got the part to that, and the first part is leaving Har Sinai. Then you have V'Hibon Soa, and then you have the story of the complaints of the man, right? The Asafsuf and the Kosh Baruch Hu having to punish Klal Yisrael because of that avera, right? And it's in the Sefer Torah itself. You have two upside down nuns separating the section. So the Gemara explains, and Rashi brings down, why are there two nuns like this, like quotation marks.
to separate ben purinot and purinot, right, between one punishment and another punishment. So the second punishment we're aware of, because you see right there in the Chumash, they complained about the man. They had meat, they had other things to eat, but they're picking on the man because they were dissatisfied. They were complainers. Really, the Erev Rav were the ones who instigated the entire thing. But that was the second mistake. So the Gemara asked a question, or Tosfos asked a question. What was the first mistake? So Tosfos explains the first mistake was because they left Har Sinai like school children who heard the bell go off. Right? Ding, ding, we're leaving, Moshe says, right? We're leaving Har Sinai, and the Jewish people say, we're already packed to go. When in fact what they should have said was, what? Leave Har Sinai? Are you kidding? How many times, are we going to come back at some point in time? Is this it? The place that God spoke to us, and God gave us His Torah, and we experienced, Gilu Shechina, and we're going to leave Har Sinai? Where are we going to go? What could be better than this? We want to stay here. We want to stay here. That should have been the reaction. So how did things change? Why did they leave so quickly? Wouldn't you want to stay at Har Sinai longer if this was going on at Har Sinai? You think so in the end. So what changed everything? So that was Eilat Zahav. The golden calf changed everything. Before the golden calf, we got to the level of Nasav and Nishma. Nasav and Nishma is Nun Aseh, Nun Shema. Right? We will listen. We got 50 days to get there. Right? The Nun Sharbina we will do and we will listen to, and they're holding the level of complete unity because the Nun Sharbina, the 50 gates of understanding, the special level of light that Mitzrayim cut off, right? Mitzrayim is Metzuyam. So that light was what came down when Hashem revealed Himself, and it gave us understanding of life in this world on a very high level, an ability to connect to Hashem on levels that we have no idea what those levels are. First, it's mostly theoretical, and it's like the Nashika. Nashika itself is actually Nun Shakra, which means like the drawing down, of the Nun. Right? So that's why a person dies by divine kiss, because the exposure to the Nun Sharibin is so intense that the body can't necessarily handle it, so the soul gets drawn out to the source of that, back up. But whatever it is, whatever the 50 gates of understanding are, they are a level of perception that allows a person to rise above the everyday mundane reality, to see into creation where the light's hidden in order to be able to extract it and sanctify creation. That's the mandate of the Jewish people. That's the goal of Torah we're here to accomplish. So that was what the experience of Hashem talking to the Jewish people brought about. The golden calf undid that. We lost our crowns, as the Gemara points out. We lost the very high level of connection to Kodesh Baruch Hu. We sank back down, as the Arizal points out. It was basically tantamount. We said Nasav V'Nishma. We got back to the level of Adam Rishon before the Chet, before he did the sin. So therefore, we were immortal temporarily. We got to a level, and that's why we had to die twice, by the way, because Techis Amazing, we didn't just reincarnate, we resurrected in the end, and that brought us back to the level of Adam before the sin, basically almost to the level of our skin being like light. Once again, like he was created with light before the Chet, his skin was like with the Kesunos Or. Right, it was clothing made from light. He didn't require physical clothing because basically he was made from light. And then after the Chet, as the Zohar points out, he went to Kesunos Or with an ayin. Right, so the first time was Aleph Vav Reish, which means light, and that's what it means that light device or V'Simcha, that we got the level of light once again, because and the whole joy that comes from being that level back in Gan Eden. And then after the Chet, Adam went down to Kesunos Or with an ayin Vav Reish. Right, and that transforms into this physical being, which is also called Mishka de Chivia, which is called the clothing of the snake, which requires clothing at that point in time. So that was a result of the Egel Zahav. The Egel Zahav was the idea of going back from Adam Rishon before the Chet to Adam Rishon after the Chet. It was a duplication of Adam Rishon's sin. We went back to being who we weren't once again, and therefore we became like school children who, hearing the bell, left school as quickly as possible. And that's the way the Nun remained from that point onward. We could not mekabel Torah Shebal Peh mi'ahava after the 120 days of Moshe going up and down, the mountain and back down again, because on the level of Kesunos Oreth and Ayin, you're physical once again. You can be selfish once again. You can be petty once again. As a result of that, you start to fetch it. It's like the potential ger who comes to hill, to Shammai first to convert. He doesn't want the whole thing. He wants the part that makes sense to him. He wants the part that worked for him, but not everything. Because when you're selfish, you find reason not to do everything you're supposed to do. But and you don't appreciate how even the things that you don't like to do are good for you. Just like children growing up. How many things do you tell children to do because it teaches them responsibility and they reject them until later on they realize those were good for me. That food was good for me. Those mitzvahs were good for me that you had. So we never rectified that. After the golden calf, we never recovered. We never got back to where we're supposed to be. And that's why the nuns are upside down in the Torah to tell us we left Har Sinai with upside down nuns. And they remained upside down until Purim time. At Purim time, nahafachu, right? Nun afuch. The nun was turned right side up again. Again, as a result of that, the Jewish people got to a level where they could see reality the way it's supposed to be seen, the way Kosh Baruch Hu sees it. They could see the hand of Kosh Baruch Hu. They could get to the level where they realize that every detail of Torah Shabbat Peh is for our good. Not for Hashem's good, but for our good. And therefore we could accept Mekabel it Mi'ahava, in love, and rectify everything, at least temporarily, at least for the time being. Because it also was kind of artificially induced. So that's what we said before. That's why Haman is called Haman, because the word Haman means Haim Nun. They are 50. Who are the 50? The Jewish people are the 50. We're the Nun, right? The word Neshama is Nun Shama. Where's the Nun Shama? It's inside of the Jewish people. Why is that? Because in the Shama of the Jewish people, as the lesson points out, is made from the Or HaGanuz. Both Torah and the souls of the Jewish people are where Shem hid the light of creation on the first, they weren't existing yet, but eventually, we came to exist in the Or HaGanuz from Maaseh Bereshis, right? So that's what it means. When you're born, or before you're born, the angel teaches you Kol Torah Kula inside the womb. You get the entire. There's nothing new you can get in the course of your lifetime. So learning is a process of recovering. You're never learning Torah from scratch. That you got when you were still in the womb. What happens is when you're born, the body covers up everything basically, and as a result of that, you lose touch with the Nun Sharibin, and the rest of life is to recover that. So Neshama reminds you that there's the Nun's inside of you. Haman or Amalek comes along to tell you, hey Nun, don't forget guys, you guys are Nun. The Nun's inside of you. You have to bring it out. So now we come to Rav Hutner's mashal, beautiful mashal, when they asked him, did I mention this already last week? No. Rav Hutner's mashal about why we drink on Purim, and it's one of the best beautiful stories. It says it so perfectly. And he says exactly the same idea. Talks about two children basically grew up in a small shtetl someplace where they played together. This last week? Yeah. So that's the whole point, right? So he's basically saying, thanks for reminding me. So he's basically saying that that's the idea, that the neshama is inside there, but it gets buried over, gets covered up. So the drinking and pouring basically is for the sake of recovering that which is missing. So that's what the Gemara means when it says, Mishnitas yayin yotzei sod. When wine goes in, sod comes out. The Gemara in Eruvin says that if somebody is able to drink, and through his drinking is able to achieve yishuv das. What does yishuv das mean? Not just you're calm. It means you achieve, das. You achieve your understanding. The Torah does not promote a lack of das. There's never an excuse for a person to lose their sense of das. And if anything, you're always trying to enhance it. When it says Adilu Yadda ben Baruch Mordechai va'aru Haman, it's not saying to the point that you're so unconscious you don't even know who you are, for that matter, right? That rather it means to get to a level of understanding where you can rise up, but you can peel yourself out of the everyday reality where people look like they're powerful and they have no power, to rise above it to see from Hashem's perspective, to see that really both Mordechai and Haman work for Hashem. They work for Kosh Baruch Hu. He runs the show, and you're real with that.
Where is this on our map here?
In terms of what? Which point?
That point where, in other words,
We're getting there. We're getting there. That's going to be the eye. That's going to be that's the parochus.
Okay. So no. But the vav here, the vav you just talked about, the nun shari vina. That's the vav, right?
Right. Exactly. That's the area.
That's the vav. That's the 50 area,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's what we're talking about. This goes beyond the spiritual blindness.
And that vav, by the way, is that vav of what we said before of uba ruchshin kavod malchusam ve'ed.
Yeah. In other words, it should have been
right. It should have been
if they were congruence with each other.
Exactly.
Then it would have been.
If Yaakov had kept in the Nevuah, that vav that was missing from that joins up Baruch Shem Kavod with the Shema and makes them one reality, right. Which means the Shekhinah wouldn't have left him and he would have lost the Nevuah. Right. So that's the vav of the Nun Sharbina.
I see.
That's what's missing. That's what Yaakov's pointing out.
So that's when everyone realizes that they're all together.
They're all one. There's no pettiness anymore, and we see the reality of that, because later on they come to Yosef. They say that they tell Menashe to tell Yosef, our father that told us to tell you before he died, that you shouldn't take revenge against us. Like, we're about to go into Galus, and we're trying to rebuild the Jewish people. That's what's on your mind. That's what you're concerned about. And you saw how you couldn't damage me, and how everything was hashgacha practice, and you're worried about me doing things. Look, if Hashem wants to hurt you, if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it at the end. But he doesn't want to hurt you, so who can touch you in the end? Like, where are you coming with this idea? Tachas Elokim Anochi says Yosef. Am I in place of God? That's exactly the point. That's what the vav comes to rectify. That's the shleimus of Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Haved, which again we said was Shechem Lamed Vav, right? And that's what puts the Lamed Vav, because Shechem is a makom mochel apoyanot until you extract the Lamed Vav. And as just like Haman was the vehicle to bring out this light, Shechem is only a place of punishment, set aside for punishment, until you touch the Vav. Once you touch the Vav, so then it becomes, Ub'Shechem Lamed Vav. What does it mean? And in Shechem, just like the light of 36 is in the realm of the angels, where you have the Shema, and that's why there's 25 letters.
It's also in Shechem too.
Exactly, it's in Shechem as well.
In Paranios.
Which is why Yosef chose to be buried there. Right? He is that light. Right? He's the Vav. Right? He went, just like Moshe is buried in Moab, to protect us from the elements and the Mevara, the Netzotze Kedusha, and all things like that. He's there specifically as a barrier for Klal Yisrael. Likewise, Yosef went to Shechem to transform Shechem to the place it's supposed to become, which is the place of Gula in the end. Right? That's the place that, from the north. That's where it's going to all happen, right? Until we get the act right. But that's what the bottom line over here is, that it's all about vision.
So
it's all about vision.
Ushchem, it would be.
Yeah, it would be Baruch Shem, but the Roshi Tevis was B'Shechem Lamed Vav. So you can read it B'Shechem Lamed Vav.
But why are you putting a bet in front of Shechem? B'Shechem.
Because Baruch Shem Kavod, and in Shechem is Lamed Vav.
Baruch Shem Kavod.
Machusel Lamed.
Also, it's the same letters.
Roshi Tevis B'Shechem Lamed Vav.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's why Yaakov Avinu first settled there?
In Shechem?
Yeah.
He first settled in Shechem. Is that where he first settled?
Well,
Could be. I don't know. Is that the first place?
When he came in,
Now you're starting to make sense, Rob.
Finally.
So in any event, so with the vav though, the vav. This is when you talked about being Yosef. The vav is Yosef, right?
Yes.
So then the vav being this 50 shari bina, right? And this is beyond the point of spiritual blindness. This is the area where now spiritual blindness is transformed into the
mind's eye vision.
Mind's eye vision, that spiritual vision.
Right.
And this is what Yosef was trying to give over to his brothers.
Exactly.
By telling them, listen, you idiots, can't you see I'm trying to give you siman, and what's the matter with you? You're so into yourselves that you can't figure out that I'm Yosef? That's
exactly. Exactly. So that's represented now. So what is that vision? That vision is the ayin. Right, the ayin that became that basically Amalek comes against. Amalek is ayin malak.
Right. I told you that also the place where I think I told you this that in Amalek when they do this kishuf, right?
Right.
They do this kishuf that they can be distinguished only in
through the eyes. Right. The eyes of the animal. If they transform themselves into an animal, they still have human eyes. Right. Also to this, so it's all but eyes. Right. As the Zohar points out, it's the difference between onig and nega, right? Nega is saras. Nega is leprosy. It's a negative thing, but it's spelled exact same letters, but where you place the ayin. The Zohar, the Gemara says, why is it an eicha that you have to pay before the ayin, even though everywhere else is an acrostic, we keep the order exactly where it's supposed to be? So the Gemara explains, because the Meraglim came back and spoke about that which they did not see. But you look at Rashi and you look at what they're saying. Everything they spoke about is everything they saw. They even brought back the fruit, samples to make the point, this is what we saw. So what the Gemara means is they physically saw that, right? They spoke what they physically saw, but it's not what they spiritually saw. It's not what they spiritually should have seen had they had the proper vision. So Amalek, ayin malak, means that Amalek comes to cut off the mind's eye. That's the whole point. What Haman tried to do, and basically, as the Gra points out, one of the main devices of Chizas Anayim. I mean, they were magicians. The whole concept of magic is to fool a person into thinking things or seeing things that they don't really see. Ultimately speaking, a Chizas Anayim is like sleight of hand. You're taking advantage of people's perception, and trying to make them look and see things the wrong way. All the enemies of the Jewish people over history have always tried to, Hitler, for example, Yimach Shema, there's the story before it, and it's a fantastic story because it's a true story that I heard about personally from the person who wrote the book himself, but he was just talking about how in the camps, how this commandant walked over to this rabbi, this Rav, and thinking he had conquered, they're all there basically in their pajamas and striped outfits and broken, and he walks over and he says, "Hey Rabbi, where's your God now?" Meaning, like, this is the best proof of all that your God doesn't exist. Because if your God existed, then none of this could take place. Because obviously, this shows that you guys can be manipulated and vulnerable. And this rabbi basically, without missing a beat, just went like this. This proves nothing. And he kicked him to death. Right in front of everybody, he kicked this rabbi to death. But that was a huge Kiddush Hashem. Certainly not a pleasant way to go, but this is exactly the point he was making. I'm not fooled. I'm not fooled by appearances. I'm not fooled by the success of Hitler and Yimach Shmo, because there's reason and answers for all of that.
Wouldn't it have been better if he kept his mouth shut?
Well, physically maybe, right, but not spiritually.
I understand. You would have
The
thought it. I mean, God would have known.
the schar that he got is probably tremendous.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So Rabbi Kiva also, the whole thing with Rabbi Kiva, that he dies a terrible death in the end, but. That short hour, 2 hours, whatever it takes, that the punishing saves him from who knows how much Gehenna. I mean, not Rabbi Kiva, but another person.
But he didn't exacerbate his punishment.
Well, he was teaching Torah. And,
Who,
in their
Rabbi Kiva?
face. Yeah, right in their face.
Yeah, but that was the mitzvah hayom. That for him, he wasn't going of his way. He was doing exactly what had to be done to preserve Klal Yisrael.
But that was his job.
Yeah, that was his job.
Go ahead and tell the Nazi that.
No, because he asked the question. At that point, to capitulate would have been a huge chilul Hashem. All the Jews who were sitting around watching, to see this rabbi capitulate at that moment in time, would have basically been a huge chilul Hashem. And this person, he caught the opportunity. He stood strong, even though he probably was coming up anyhow. And I mean, the schar be unbelievable in the world to come. I mean, this is really what the story. That's why it's tied to Purim as well. And since you brought that point up, because it's tied.
Actually, I can understand it.
But no, but Charun B'Tarajin, right? It's a very, very story in the Gemara. He's teaching Torah B'Rabbim, and they come over, and his Rebbe is Rabbi Yosef Kisma, and he goes to visit his Rebbe, and he says, I hear about you. You're teaching Torah B'Rabbim, teaching in public. I do privately take a risk, the fourth, whatever everyone else is doing, but to teach B'Rabbim with the Sefer Torah in your hands, the Romans have been very successful. They destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, destroyed the Heichal. They're doing whatever they want over here. Obviously, Kush Baruch Hu is favoring them for the time being, and we're on the lower end of the stick, right? So, what you're doing over here is basically suicidal. You can't simply just go and do that. So, that's a very, powerful statement and understandable. But Rechaim Tetraja's answer back is confusing. He says, well, just tell me one thing. Am I going to the world to come? Well, I go to the world to come, right? Well, you're being mostly nefesh to teach Torah, to preserve it. It's a fantastic mitzvah you're doing. And then his Rebbe's answer back is even more astounding, because he comes back and he says that well, have you done anything noteworthy?
What is it?
Have you done anything noteworthy? You want to know if you're going to the world to come? Have you done anything that like that shows you've earned it? He's teaching Torah in public, putting his life on the line to preserve the Jewish people, and now his Rebbe wants to know if his student has done anything that might possibly earn him the reward in the world to come. What about what I'm doing right now? And his answering to this, his answer to the astounding question is even more astounding. He says, "Well, let me think about it for a second. Oh yeah. There was this episode where on Purim I was collecting tzedakah Matos of Yonim for the poor, right? And accidentally my money got mixed up with the money of the Matos of Yonim, whatever reason." And I didn't know I had to make the calculation, whatever, so I gave the whole thing away. My money and the money of the Matos of Yonim, combined together. Chas v'chalila, I should take any of that money for myself. That's what the answer is back. And we're all going, that's your example? You're like putting your life on the line, teaching Torah over here. and the Romans are going to get you, and you're bringing up an example of how you gave a little extra money because you're worried about stealing from poor people, okay. And as Rebbe comes back with an astounding answer to the astounding question by saying, oh, if that's the case, my portion should be like your portion. And the Gemara goes on to say, after that it wasn't long before Rosh Hashanah died, and all the Romans who respected him came out to bury him, to honor him, basically. On the way back, they saw Chanan ben Teradyon teaching Torah b'Rabbim. They took him, they wrapped him up. The whole story, we know the end of the story as it flows. The question becomes, what was the Shakavatari over here? What's going on? What was the question? What was the answer? Why did he answer like that? So Rav Berkowitz once gave a shir on this many years ago, and he explained that basically that everybody rises to the occasion during times of crisis. It can be sloppy, in Torah mitzvahs and chesed, and all of a sudden there's a crisis that comes along. There's anti-Semitism, there's oppression, and people rise to the occasion. They're even willing to put themselves on the line for things they wouldn't even do, without putting themselves on the line before the actual crisis came along. Right? People will sacrifice coffee to smuggle in a shofar where they might have overslept on Rosh Hashanah morning and then got the shul late to even hear the shofar. It's like, but all of a sudden people rise to the occasion. If that's the case, he says, then you're being suicidal. And who says it's mutter to do a thing like that? Right? They're being successful. The Romans have the upper hand over here. Who says you're being? This is what what the moment calls for. Maybe it calls for instead to learn Torah privately out of the eye shot of the Romans and survive. So he comes back and he says, well, it's not so simple. He says, well, what do you mean? Why is it not so simple? He says, because I'm a kanoi. That's who I am. He says, well, prove it. This is like the dialogue behind the dialogue. Right? He says, prove it. He said, I'll prove it because there was a time in my life when nobody was watching, and I didn't have to worry about it. I could have been a cheshbon and been a little bit machmir and kept some money for myself. But I went ahead and it was rizus. I gave all that money, even my money, and there was no pressure, and that's the way I did things. So he said, if that's the case, then your teaching Torah b'Rabbim is a function of who you are. In which case, your schar will be unbelievable because of your Mesiras Nefesh and your zealousness. And halavai, my portion should be like your portion in the world to come. And the same is true of Mordechai, right? Meaning that Mordechai was a rodif, right? He was antagonizing Haman. Everybody else that the Gemara discusses whether it's mutter, asur, they bowed down to him what he was asking for, basically. And Mordechai, okay, you don't want to bow down. You want to be machmir? You're worried about the halacha? Stay home. Stay home. Stand to the side. Go someplace where Haman can't see you. But to run across the courtyard into his path so you don't bow down duck when he walks by, you're endangering the entire Jewish people. And he had a din of a rodif. And there are people who wanted to kill him. Until they said, leave him alone. He's a kanoi. This is who Mordechai was all of his life. That's why I think in the Chumash, you look in Parshas Ve'era, it mentions the lineage of Moshe Rabbeinu. It mentions Pinchas ben Ezra ben Arakot as well. But there it mentions Pinchas with the Yud already. He's not going to get the Yud till much later on in Parshas Pinchas. Up until that point in time, he was still without the Yud. So why is the Yud written in Parshas Ve'era? To meramis to us, to tell us that even back there when he was a nobody, there was nothing else going on, he was already a zealot. That's the way he did his Torah, and that's the way he did his mitzvahs. He was driven. So when the moment came along later on in the desert, decades later, that's who he was. There was no stopping him. Just like there was no stopping Moshe Rabbeinu, because a kanoi is a kanoi is a kanoi, through and through. And that's why the story of Purim, of all the things for Chanan ben Teradyon to bring in to prove his kanos, Matanos of Yonim, a connection to Purim. But what's this connection over here? Because that's what Purim comes to do, to make you kanoi. Mordechai saves the day because he's a kanoi. But how do you get to the level of being kanoi? How does one become a kanoi? Because you see today people make a big mistake about it. There's extremists, right, who like to call themselves kanoim. The people who go out there and either speak in the ears of the Gedolei Dor to try and stop this and stop that, or don't speak but go do it on their own anyhow. Right? There was once years ago my Gemara Rebbe, big Talmid Chacham, and there was a time when they were spray painting the bus shelter, because all the advertising that was unfitting to be printed anywhere, but certainly in places like Haredi neighborhoods, and a bunch of people who got very offended by this thing went to certain Rabbanim Gedolei in the area asking them if they would become go out there and start spray painting these bus shelters and protest against Egged putting these things in the bus shelters. And the answer back was no, we're not going to do it because it's an act of kudos, and we're not so sure we're on the level to do a thing like that. They wouldn't do it. They weren't sure that they could do it with the full, commitment to the as a halacha, as an expression of connection to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So rather than make like Shimon and Levi, for example, went into Shechem of all places, right? And Yaakov criticizes their anger. Was a Maisa right? Was a Maisa wrong? What they did was it chayiv, not chayiv, whatever the cheshbonos are. But Yaakov singles out their anger and then says, "You ruined, you tainted the whole thing." There might have been kanos in there somewhere, but the moment you let personal feelings, personal anger enter the picture, you taint it, you distracted, and then you make people call to question whether it was mutter in the first place at all. In the end, that's what Yaakov says. So the same thing. They're saying we're not so sure. We're not going to taint this thing. So they held back. So what happened instead? These people did it themselves. They went and did themselves in the end. Well, successful, not successful. It's a very, very true. Cheshbon, to be a kanoi requires something very, very specific, something very, very unique. And what is that? That's the ayin. That's the ayin that Amalek comes to cut off, because the ayin, as we see, you go from the Nun Shari Bina to the Heichel, the 50 plus the 20, you get to the Parochas, but the Parochas, you're now holding by the Makam in the Mishkan, which is Lamam Teva, it's the reality above the reality. At that level, you already become totally selfless. You're no longer being pulled into the everyday mundane reality of petty desires and petty interests and confusing realities, but you're seeing the world the way Kodesh Baruch Hu sees the world. The ayin comes before at the beginning. It's the intellectual, mental, spiritual vision, and that turns neg into oneg. That becomes a source of true joy and source of pleasure, and that's what Purim comes to create. That's what Purim comes to bring us to. So that's why the whole Inyan of Mishadik's Yain Yotzei Sod. What's the sod that's being coming out in the end? That's the neshama. That's what Hutner says. That's the nun shama. You're trying to extract the neshama. You're neutralizing the body through the yayin itself for the sake of allowing the neshama to come out, and with that comes the sod, because that's kol Torah kula. The Malach taught you before you were born, and with that comes the vision, and then you can see things differently, and that's why it's Yom Kippurim, right? Because what's Yom Kippur? On Yom Kippur, you're able to say what's the whole difference of Yom Kippur versus the rest of the year. It's an amazing thing. Aside from the fact we fast and we wear the clothing, and the shoes, and we're davening the whole day. But what is one of the main identifying factors of Yom Kippur? You can now say Baruch Shem Kavod Machuso Leolam Ve'ed out loud. Mm-hmm. Why can you do that? So we're told because those words Moshe Rabbeinu brought down from Har Sinai. Aside from the fact that it goes back to Yaakov Avinu and the whole tikkun that was missing over there, right? But Moshe came down with these words because they heard the Malachim saying it, and it really belongs to the Malachim. And we don't want to be mekatrik ourselves and get in trouble with Malachim because they're going to get jealous. We're using their statement. So what do we do instead? So we say Balacha. Should we say it quietly instead? So the Lashem explains, well, there's two reasons we say it quietly. One is for the sake of the fact that we don't want to anger the Malachim, right? And the second reason is because of the fact that we don't really believe it. We don't believe, we intellectually believe it. We know it's true, but we don't act consistent with it. Our vision is not consistent. We'll say it, and then we'll act in ways that seem to indicate that we're not so sure Hashem is involved in every aspect of everyday life. And we take things into our... The whole concept of sin, chet, is when it's a lack of bitachon. A person will take for themselves something that they believe that's in their hand, their responsibility, because Baruch Hu will not take care of my needs. Every need I take. If I don't have something, right, it's possible that maybe I should be able to go and get it somehow, or maybe even a lizalita. But a person too bitachon amuna, because Baruch Hu brings everything in its proper time. But as a lesson to the whole Inyan Baruch Shem Kavod Machzaved is the vision, it's the ayin in the end. So on Yom Kippur, we get Siyata D'Shmaya, because Baruch Hu, plus the fasting, plus the focusing, concentration, the shul, we're able to rise to the vision of the Malachim. So now we can say Baruch Shem Kavod Machus L'Med, but the Malachim they're so superficial, they're so dumb, they can't realize that it's still human beings doing it down there. The fact that we're wearing no shoes or running shoes, keeping our feet together, who's saying that? Look, those people they look like angels today. Oh, I guess they're angels. They don't know what's going on over there. They don't. It's not the fact that the problem with the angels is not that human beings are saying they're lying. It's muzuyaf. Is that if you're going to say it, you have to be real with it. That's the problem, and that's what they said in Har Sinai to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? They said to Moshe Rabbeinu, how can Torah to Kosh Baruch Hu also? How can Torah go down into the lower worlds, right? How is it possible mechalel Torah to profane it by taking these holy words, this holy light down into the everyday mundane reality of everyday life? I can do that like that. So Moshe says, well, did you go to Mitzrayim? You can mention this mitzvah over here. Do you have parents that you could honor in the end? So, that's not a kasha. I mean, the Gemara accepts that because it's dealing with pshat. But al pisah, that's not kasha, because we know that every mitzvah has different levels to it. So in this world, there's kibud es avicha v'sitmacha, right? And therefore you have to have physical parents to be able to do that. But in the higher level of the angels, there's a way to mekayim the mitzvah without physical parents. You see, Mitzrayim is a concept that's always going to exist. It became a physical reality because we're living in this physical world, but there's a way to mekayim the mitzvah even after or even before on a different level. So Malchim could have said, yeah, it's because you guys are humans, because you drag the Torah down there, so now you have to have parents, right? So then how's Moshe's answer? So the answer is because that
What was Moshe's answer?
Moshe's answer was that how can you fulfill the mitzvahs if you don't even have all the requirements to fulfill the mitzvahs?
He's talking to the angels.
It's on the angels, right? And it goes through one by one and shows them how basically, but al pisah, the answer is not complete because you don't have to have physical, just like for example, tefillin, right? Don't have to be black boxes with leather straps. They weren't always that way. There was a way to make kindness with tefillin without black boxes and without leather straps before Har Sinai. Once the Kosh Baruch Hu was conveyed the Torah and said, this is how you now achieve the mitzvah tefillin, because on the level you're holding right now, you won't the other ways. But there's a medrash that says when Yaakov put the stick in the ground to produce the sheep, basically, he was mekayim of tefillin. Whatever tefillin is supposed to accomplish, it's a concept. It's a portal. Every mitzvah is a portal to a different spirituality. There's different ways to act. You're not going to have tefillin in Techis and Meisim and in Lamabah, but you're still mekayim mitzvah. Kosh Baruch Hu, this was Parsha, as Rashi points out, when Moshe was hiding in the cleft of the rock, and Kosh Baruch Hu said, you can't look at my face, but you can look at the back of my head. So Rashi says, what's that? Right? You could see the kesher tefillin. As Kosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, where's tefillin, the Gemara says? What kind of tefillin? Imagine being the sofer for those tefillin. Right, take a long time to make it. Huge. But what kind of tefillin is Hashem making? So obviously tefillin is a concept. It's a mitzvah, it's a reality. It means something. And Kabbalah explains what those actually are. So we need physical devices to allow us to access.
Were we part of Hashem's tefillin?
We're mentioned. Am Yisrael's mentioned in his cloth inside has us, right? Mikam Yisrael. So our film talks about Kosh Baruch Hu, and his film Kiviyachol talks about us. In the end, that's what the Gemara says.
And wasn't I forget was it was maybe Yitzchak and Berchef who confronted him and said, if you're going to throw the Jewish nation away, then your tefillin are puzzle.
Yeah, I didn't hear that, but it's nice.
And he confronted him like that, and he says, very good sport, so he let him go. So someone told me that voice that was in the name of Levi. I think it was Levi Yitzchak and Berchef.
Well,
he had the chutzpah to be able to. He loved the Jewish people so much.
Oh yeah.
And since he loved the Jewish people so much, that
Right.
he was able to.
Okay. But that's the point. So what Moshe is saying to Malachim is, yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. But you have to understand and appreciate the whole point of Hashem giving Torah. What's the point of a Kosh Baruch Hu creating a world where everything is perfect already? What does he gain from that? He doesn't gain anything. But what's the point of that? What would be the top? The whole point is to build that vision. You can't build that vision. You're made with it. You're created with it. That's why the Shema applies to you. The Shema is the yichud of the upper realm. It's the upper world, right? It's the vision of Kosh Baruch Hu on an ongoing basis where they can praise Hashem nonstop because they always are in touch. There's no barriers. There's no masachim. Not in terms of we have down the world below over here. Whereas by in this world, Moshe said, we have masachim, but nothing gives Hashem more nachas than when somebody works their way up as a child through adolescence, through teenagehood to become an adult, where they rebuild that vision they were given by the Malach in the womb to get to the level of ayin. It's all about getting to the ayin. So that's why wine and the number 70, the parochas, is also central to the entire story. The whole point of Purim, the whole point of life is getting the vision of ayin,
When you
the
say
mind's
parochus,
eye.
What do you mean by parochus? I mean, the parochus is the beginning of the second.
Yeah,
That's right
That's
here,
the
right?
door, exactly.
That's
That's the
so
no.
getting-
It's that little line between the two sections there, after the heichel.
Over here?
No, up higher. Right, yeah, that
Over
one.
here.
Yeah, that's the
At the
parochus.
Kodesh.
Yeah, at the
So
door of the
was
Kodesh
So
Kodashim.
the iron, how does the iron?
The 50
incorporate-
of the Chatzar,
Yeah.
right? Can I just pull this for 1
Right,
second?
right. From here to here, right?
Right. Right?
Yeah,
So that's 50, and then the
Right.
20 here,
yeah.
that's the 70.
So how does that incorporate in the iron?
Because that's what the ayin represents. The ayin is that vision. The vision to be able to see Kodesh Baruch Hu in the everyday reality on a miraculous level.
So in other words, the iron to this point is not.
It's not developed yet.
It's not developed.
No, you've basically got the foundation for it. It's like somebody, for example, the fact that a person learns Torah, see, it's also the difference between the Luchos Rishonos and the second set of Luchos. So Lesson points out, the first set of Luchos, as we mentioned before, that's Torah's Asilus, that's Torah's Mashiach. He says that when you learn that Torah, there was no such thing as forgetting Torah. You learn something, you built and you built and you built, and not only that, that when someone learned Torah on that level, it was mashpia on the whole world automatically. It just automatically brought tikkun to the world. The level of Torah that Moshe came down, the second set of Luchas, also this week's parsha mentioned, right? They came down with. That's a level of Torah that's barely mashpia on the person himself, let alone your neighbors and your whole. You know, the first set of Luchas, someone learned Torah, you could say, hey, someone must be learning. I feel much all of a sudden more spiritually inclined. You're 6 blocks away. The whole world got tikkun all of a sudden because it's just level after level after level you went up. There's no things you wouldn't have to chaz your learning with the first set of luchos because whatever you learned you just built upon the entire time. The second set of luchos actually was the result of the golden calf because since the Jewish people, there's different ways of looking at it, but since the Jewish people acted as if they had not received the mitzvah of Lohi Elohim Acherim by building a golden calf over here, they were punished with forgetfulness, the Gemara says. Every time you chazer your learning, to remember it, you're actually being mechaper for the golden calf. Because as a result of that, the Torah we have, and that's what it means by he held the luchos, but the letters flew back to Shemayim. So everything we're learning, as I'm talking to you right now, as you open a sefer, every time you learn Torah, the letters want to go back to Shemayim. They're always flying back to Shemayim. You have to work hard to keep them inside of yourself. So that's what the Gemara says. If forgets their learning, it's like bearing their own children in the end. Because the Gemara wants to make clear that the fact that you learn something is not a guarantee you're going to change your life. It could be that way, and certainly the basis of it, you have a whole foundation. But we see there's so much inconsistency amongst the Jewish world. And I'm talking about the secular world, I'm talking about the frum world. We learn things, but somehow whatever we learn doesn't necessarily, as an automatic reality, become implemented in our everyday life. And some things we never implement, but you have to work on it. So that's the result. You have Musar, you have Pirkei Avos. What's the point of Pirkei Avos and all these Musar
These
for
other forms of learning would not have existed in the first set of
You would need them. It would all be combined. It would all be combined. It would be an automatic reality because you'd be accessing your neshama on an ongoing basis. Your goof would not be interfering because you'd be like Adam Arishon before the Chet, and therefore, and the Torah was on a higher level, and so automatically, just like what's going to happen in Techiyas HaMesi. In Yemos HaMashiach onward, and certainly Techiyas HaMesi, and certainly in the world to come, there's no such thing as going down. It's only going up, level after level after level after level. So everything that we're experiencing is post-Chet, first from Adam Rishon, and then from the Egel Zahav. So we need ways to implement. So for example, what do you need Pirkei Avos for? You're learning Torah, you're learning the Chumash, you're learning Bereshis, Shmos, V'ikra, B'midbar, Devar.
Only because we had committed the sin of the Egel of Zahav, is what you're saying.
Right. So Pirkei Avos, the basic Torah learning of halacha and all the information you're gathering, the Gemara would correspond to the Vav, the Nun Shar Bina. Right? You learn Torah, you learn the Nun Shar Bina. Pirkei Avos and Musar, those things that are specifically geared at integrating into your life would correspond to the Heichel, the 20.
That's the
right. That's where the
But
Ketoris is.
That's still after the Egel of Zahav, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's because of the Egel Zahav. Don't forget, this is the response. This Mishkan was not supposed to exist. The Tanchuma says.
According to the Zohar,
No, the Mishkan, the basic Mikdash for sure was supposed to exist. But the Mishkan.
Ramban and the Zohar say that the Mishkan was not a response.
Yeah. Okay. No, there's something.
The Egel of Zahav.
Yeah.
Rambam, Rashi, and Sforno all say it's as a result of having committed the Egel
Well, the Tanchuma says it beferish. The Tanchuma says beferish is because it brings the pasuk down. Because the gold that you're going to use to build this should be in place to negate the gold that was used to build the Egel Zahav, and the Mishkan specifically the Tanchuma says was created to tell the nations of the world that Kosh Baruch Hu forgave the Jewish people for the golden calf. That's the whole point, and that's why the Gemara also says it. It's a refubi for the Makir, and all parshas are turned around because of it. It's all negative. So that the accepted shita for sure is that it's in response to the golden calf. It's not really important whether it is or isn't the end, because the truth is automatically it is, because the fact if we had simply done at Har Sinai, if we had not turned the nun upside down with the golden calf, if the nun had stayed right side up the way it's supposed to be, we would travel 11 days from Har Sinai to Eretz Yisrael, B'derech Plishtim, as was supposed to have been the case. The 11 corresponds to the Das, which is the Nun Sharbina. We'll get a little technical over here. And therefore the 11 klippas that were not rectified at the time of Ma'aseh Bereshis would have been fixed up, and we wouldn't have lost Moshe. Everything would have been the way it's supposed to have been, ideally speaking. So either way, the Mishkan ends up being a reality. It comes as a tikkun for the golden calf. So it's giving us the advantage, like somebody, God forbid, who you're supposed to walk with your two legs, wherever you want to go. Person or see with your two eyes, for that matter. A better example is really the glasses. That really you're supposed to be able to see clearly with your eyes, but unfortunately vision gets weak as time goes on. You have glasses to rectify that. So the Mishkan acts as glasses, lens. In fact, Purim, that's why Purim has to come before Pesach. Now the Gemara in Mesamech Gula Gula's Gemara says in Megillah, why is it in a leap year that we celebrate Purim and Adar Sheni and not Adar Rishon? Every other time we have a situation, the Gemara says, we learn from Chumetz, from Matzah, that the same way that you can't let the dough sit 18 minutes without working it because it becomes Chumetz. Likewise, a mitzvah should be done as soon as possible because you don't do the mitzvah right away. It can escape you, distractions come up, Amalek tries to get involved somehow, and on some level, every other place in the world that we have a situation to do a mitzvah the first chance we can do it, unless there's another mitzvah that comes up in place of it, which makes you patur from the other one, you do it. Only by Purim do we push it off until Adar Sheni, and the Gemara says the reason why, and this is even more amazing because you have an Indian of in-marvel mitzvahs, right? You don't pass over a mitzvah or a potential mitzvah, right? And the Gemara says, okay, that's true, and we always follow that rule except over here. Why? Here, we have a concept that never comes up anywhere else in Shas, or halacha or poskim called mesamech geula legeula. We want to place one. It's an Indian. It's like not even a halacha. It's just a nice idea to put one geula in advance close to the other geula. Pesach is a geula time, right? And therefore Purim is a geula time. So let's push off the mitzvah of Purim one whole month just to have Purim close to Pesach. I mean, that's unprecedented. We don't do things like that. Except in this case, you have to. Why? Because the concept of where's the cherus really come from? Not from Purim. Pesach is cherus. Zman cherus seinu. If anything, is zman schokes seinu is Purim time, right? It's not zman cherus seinu. Pesach is the time to achieve cherus. It's got the kedusha. It's the opening. It's the portal, right? The trouble is that we got old. We got old, and our vision got weak. Whatever we experienced in Mitzrayim, whatever we experienced after that, the Midbar, it wore off. As time went on, it wore off. To find it by Purim time, I mean, it takes place around Pesach time, right? But, we basically lost complete understanding of how to use Pesach as a way to get out, as for the sake of Gula in the end. Purim came along to magnify, to correct the vision of Klal Yisrael. So when Pesach came along, we were ready for it. That's what the Gemara means, Mesamach Gula Gula. You need the Geula of Purim to be able to achieve the Gula of Pesach. Yeah, you could do Purim in the month of Adar Rishon, close to Shvat, where it often is every single year, and do the mitzvah and not Mikayim, Ein Marvila mitzvah, 100%. But if you do that, there'll be 60 days between Purim and Pesach, and by that time you'll totally forget what Purim came to teach you, and Pesach you'll just go right through and not achieve what it's meant to help you achieve in the end. Because it's all about this idea of ayin, of vision. It's about getting past the masach of 20, right? It's about getting into the nun shari bina, But you have to understand that Nun Shari Bin is not enough. Learning Torah is not enough. Not today. There was a time, yes, the Luchas Rishonos, that was for sure the case. That would have been the case, but not once the Egel took place. We're no longer capable of being mushpa from our learning automatically. It takes work. You have, and so you have Musar jars, you have Musar, periods of time. You have Musar in the Gemara. You have all kinds of devices and tools. But we see how hard it is to make ourselves real with the reality of Torah. So that's what the Heichel is all about. So you have the menorah, you have the mizbech and kataris, you have the shochem. Basically, they're dealing with all aspects of everyday life, trying to show you how to take the kedusha of the Nun Shari Bina and infuse it into everyday mundane activities. How to use it on every day in terms of achieving das understanding, and when you're doing the most mundane, like the Nefesh Chaim points out, there's Gemara, Machlokas the Gemara between the Rashbi and Rabbi Yishmael, right? Whether or not a person should sit and learn Torah full time, or whether he should go out and make a parnas or not, right? So the Rashbi said, Kollel for everybody. Everybody's got to sit and learn Kollel. That's who we are. There's Baruch Hu will take care of our needs. Rabbi Yishmael says it's not going to work, right? It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Some people, yes, but the majority are not going to happen to. So he says. So Gemara says, many people tried the Rashbi's way and didn't succeed. And most people tried, many people tried the Rishon's way, and they did succeed, right? So from this Gemara you get out that basically, Torah, Talmud Torah im derech eretz. You got to, in malachi, you get a job, work. Doesn't mean that nobody should learn in kol. That means if you're cut off from learning kol, you can sit and learn either in poverty or whatever the case may be. But that, it's like Torah sum so. It's the way you are, and you can't live without it. Like Ben Azai, for example. And people at a very high level, and you're not going to become bitter if you're not if you can't make a living at the whole thing, and your wife is okay with that too. You're fine. You learn Torah full time and go ahead and do it. And if a time in history like ours today where we can support people like that, great, fantastic. Support people like that. But if you're not like that, forget it. It's not going to work. You just go the other direction in the end. So Nefesh Chaim comes along and he adds a very important point. He says the Gemara is not telling you that people who can't learn full time have to stop learning. That's what it means, right? It means that basically there are people who are fortunate enough that they can sit and they can learn in the basement all day long and all night long, because that's the reality. The rest of us, even when we're working, it has to be for the sake of Torah. In other words, if you're going to be in the stock market, a place is mundane, it's a stock market, people are yelling things out, money, it's a money environment, and most of the people around you are not so spiritual necessarily. If you're there, you have to be there because you're supporting Torah. Meaning, you're paying for Shabbos. Why am I here? To make money? No. I'm here because I'm a frum Jew who's supposed to live by Torah, and I need money, right? I need to pay for Shabbos, to pay for my kids' shiva, cheder. My wife needs a sheito. She needs clothes. Yantiv. I need all these things. This is my vehicle. This is my means to be able to achieve that. I'm working as a doctor, became a doctor instead. I invested 20 some odd years of my life to become a doctor. Fantastic. So now I can add to that cheshbon the mitzvah saving people's lives too, right? But the entire time that I was going to university in college, and I can't sit there instead of a lecture and say, it's nice what Dr. So-and-so said, but you know what the Torah says about good mitzvahs? Can't do that. That's not going to fly. And if you're going to focus on your Gemara in the middle of the lecture on medicine, you're not going to learn what you're there to learn in the first place. So don't be there. But the kavana, right, the vision that you have of life has to be Torah-based. It remains to be, it's called Torah still. If you're going to go do something secular, totally secular, but for Torah reasons, not selfish reasons that are disguised as Torah reasons, that doesn't fly. Because Baruch Hu knows the hearts of everybody, basically, right? But whatever you're going to do, you're going to meet the president, you're going to meet the prime minister, you're going to fly to whatever you're going to do, but you're doing it for some Torah reason, somewhere in the cheshbon, and that's what's driving you. It's also called Talmud Torah too. It's also called learning. Okay, there are people who are fortunate enough to learn, in the base of directly, because you're getting, it's all Torah, everything's Torah, there's nothing but Torah. If the Torah is the blueprint for Ma'aseh Bereshis, by definition, everything has to be in it. Everything has to be in it. It's all Torah in the end. So what makes something chol? It becomes chol the moment I divest, that thing from the Torah itself. The moment I separate, I make it a separate reality to itself. That makes it chol in the end. But I can do the most mundane activity, like changing diapers, I don't know if it's called the most mundane, but certainly it's not high on the list of priorities. On Yom Kippur, day, a solemn day, I used to get this question all the time. I used to teach women, right? How are we supposed to get Yom Kippur, and be real Yom Kippur when we're at home, raising it? We can't even go to shul. Like change the baby's dirty diapers on Yom Kippur. Can't God make it for one day? They don't do that type of a thing. It doesn't work out that way, right? So it's like, but if that's the mitzvah at the moment, there's nothing higher. You're like the Kohen Gadol and the Kodesh Kodeshim, because that's what life. That's the mitzvah. That's what God requires right now. That transforms everything. That all comes down to the ayin. It's all vision. It's all your perspective. There's no two realities. There's only one reality. Purim comes to merge them. Purim neutralized the conductor, like the mashal. He neutralized it so you can see reality as God sees reality. Clearly.
Is that with the hay? Now we're talking about, is that with the hay?
That's what
Because
they,
you mentioned that, I'm trying to
Yeah.
merge on. There was the hay. If I understand you correctly, you're saying that the objects within the
yes,
the Kodesh,
yes, that's the head, right? That's the bina.
objects which are the menorah and the shulchan and the mizbech zahav, right? Those three activities are very mundane.
Yeah, because the ketores, for example, is the corresponds to das elokim, right? There are 11 spices.
Right.
11 is always the number of das,
Uh-huh.
right? Das elokim,
Right.
which is what Purim is all about, which is why it's so coincidental that Purim falls in the same week, and this is being spoken about, Parshat Kisisa, right?
Right.
And what's mentioned inside there is Mar Dror. As I mentioned last week, that's the Mur, of course, that corresponds to Mordechai, who brings the whole thing about it. And how much of the Mar Dror, of the mirror, do you actually include? 70 manas. Right? That's the setting, because Mordechai is the ayin. He's that vision. That's who Mordechai is, right? That's what he's bringing the Jew. He's trying to share that, right? He's trying to bring that level of vision to the Jewish people, because that's the Gula. The Gula, we made this point before, but here it becomes more relevant, right? Geula is not what people think it is. It's not this fantastically sophisticated change of reality where you're looking this way and it comes in this way. Geula is totally built in the minds of Klal Yisrael. In other words, if the entire Jewish people would simply get to the level of ayat, to get to this vision, and that's what Mordechai knew. You see what happens. Like it's we see it in Mitzrayim.
I hear what you said. I just want to see if I understand it.
Yeah.
The fact is, when you're saying that at this level of ayin,
Yeah,
when the Jewish people, or anyone within the Jewish people, see that every activity that is going on is a nace in and of itself, then that is the ayin. In other words, there's no such
Exactly.
thing as teva. No such thing as teva.
and so who says that?
Who says that?
Yeah, where's the famous Meister? That's
Oh, famous mice of that? I don't know.
Chilin Ben Dosa.
Right, with the vinegar.
With the vinegar.
Right,
That's what he says to his
exactly.
daughter.
Yes, exactly. That's what you meant.
She's, if you have that ayin vision,
And this is what you're talking about. That's
Exactly.
exactly what you're saying. So if you're looking at things that are separate from Torah, then you have a teva vision. But
exactly.
if you see everything as flowing through Torah, then everything therefore is a nace, and you have a perspective of the ayin.
Exactly.
But that is the ayin with the hay.
Yes.
That's the ayin with the hay.
Yeah.
Okay, because if those elements within the heichal, within the kodesh, right? Those, like you're saying, are mundane activities: lighting a candle, baking a bread, lighting the incense. Even though the incense is a
The
spiritual,
shochan is bread. And it's like parnasa.
right?
Parnasa. Right? Represent parnasa.
Right,
As the Gemara says, if you want to be rich, you face towards the north, because that's where the shochan was. If you want to be wise, you face towards the menorah, face toward the Durham south, that's the direction of the menorah. Right? So it's all that's the heichal represents the kedusha of Jewish life. It's like all the three components inside there. So that's why the menorah is the wisdom, is just like the ketores is the das. The menorah is also the das. I just happened to mention, or happened to realize it.
Just
Yeah.
once ago, the Taurus is the das. How is it again?
How's
How is the Ketoris das? Just because of the number of spices? There's 11 spices.
Well, that's the remnants, but the real reason is because basically that what you're doing is you're taking something that was solid, that was large and hard, and you're grinding it down into very duck, and in Kippur it's even more refined, right? So how do you get to the level of das? Das learning is a process of taking in ideas and grinding them down. We even talk about, let me digest that. Right? That's an interesting idea. Let me digest it. What do you mean digest it? Well, I just told it to you. What's the problem? Because the mind is not tofus it right away at this point in time. You have to like grind it down. So you see, the biggest problem the world has today, not just today but always, is how unsophisticated the approach to knowledge actually is. They take for granted that what they see and what they hear is all there is to know. When in fact there's like deeper and there's implications. What's the Gemara doing? The Gemara is like a mortar and pestle. What do they call it? Mortar and pestle, right? The thing you grind the spices.
Yeah.
That's what the Gemara is. It's exactly. If you had to draw a picture of the Gemara, diagrammatically, that's what it was. Because the Gemara is taking ideas and grinding them down, getting down to the essence of it, getting down to the duck. And then once you finally, this is beautiful, right? Once you finally get them to, they're so refined into a powder, you burn them and they go up. They smell good, right? It becomes a pleasing fragrance of Kosh Baruch Hu. The instance is telling you, you want to bring nachas ruach to your God, to Kosh Baruch Hu. You want to make him have pleasure. Take his world, which is kulu knowledge. It's all knowledge. The soul's knowledge. It's all about knowledge. It's about what you know. That's why it's not coincident of history. The beginning of history was an Eitz Das Tovara, right? And again, 25 plus 11, right? 25 represents the knowledge in its hidden abstract form. The 11,
That's where or.
right?
Or-
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
The 11, the positive 11, is the Das of Torah. Combined with that, it allows you to extract the 25 to transform it into 36, which is the Gilui of Hashem in creation. So therefore, you like 36 candles corresponding to the organus, right?
Where'd you get the 11 from?
The number 11 from?
Yeah.
Because you want to go from 25 to 36.
Yeah, I understand.
No, but because the number 11. No, because the 11 itself is the dust.
Yeah, that's
Right?
what I'm trying to say.
Kabbalistically, we know that because it was brought down the base of Kabbalah. Kush Baruch was making Ma'aseh Bereshis.
What, I'm sorry?
When Kush Baruch was making Ma'aseh Bereshis,
Right.
and the light's coming down,
Right.
he's mataking everything on the way down. But he leaves behind 11 lights, unrectified, unfixed, and those 11 unrectified lights become the source of the 11 klippas, which are the source of the 11 chiefs of Esav who represent those 11 klippas, which is why there are 11 Mizmorim were forgot when Moshe Benu was nifter, which is why there are 11 days difference between the solar year and the lunar year, because, and by the way, this morning the moon was unbelievable. I think to throw that in, but about 4:03 this morning I was walking down the street, and it was like the end of the, why am I putting this up right now? I'm not quite sure. But it was like this huge orange ball, literally look, it was within touching, within reaching distance. But yeah, the point over here was that
The year is.
I mentioned that
very
because I
short.
was shocked. The vision of this moon was so
Right, yeah,
eerie.
yeah.
But anyway, but there's 11-day difference because the moon represents the Jewish people, right? And the 11-day difference is what we bring to the world. If our job as Klal Yisrael is to be mashlim the das of the world. We're the conduit through which the Torah makes its way into the world. We're just like the letters, the osis on the Sefer Torah are conduits for the Or HaGanuz to come into the world, which is why during Hagbog you're supposed to look at the letters and see them as long as you possibly can. Likewise, the Jewish people are the conduits for the Or HaGanuz coming to the world. So we correspond to the moon to remind us that our job is to reflect the light of Hashem to the rest of the world, to bring it to the world. So we represent the Das, the 11. So that's why there was 11 days between Har Sinai and Eretz Yisrael. To conquer that, to overcome that would have destroyed, that would have purified, rectified the 11 klippas, the 11 lights that were not rectified, and have brought Yimas Mashiach. That's the way it works, basically. There's other 11s also by Nida. Hilchos Nida is also the 11 as well. It's tied to the same idea. Everywhere there's going to be 11 showing up, you're going to find the exact same concept. Same idea, basically. But 11 represents the das. So you have a to das, tovara, right? Which means you have a positive das, and you have a negative das, right? The world is filled with das, but there's like negative das, negative knowledge that not only doesn't rectify the world, it undoes rectification in the end, right? So 25 plus 11 is the Gilu Shechina, which is why 36 is the number of Neros, is Pesumi Nisa, to reveal the Kosh Baruch Hu, right? Then you have 25 subtract 11, the same light, but with negative dash is the 14. So the 14
That's what you said.
die. Hashem said die to the light coming down, stops 14 levels from the bottom, the gematria of die, and that's why it says Yad al Keska by Amalek. The Yad is the die, the 14. Right? As long as Amalek is alive, these 14 levels range. So what are we in Elenu? What are we talking about? Tikkun Ol, Malchus Shekai, right? We're trying to fix up that because we're trying to bring the light, the final 14 levels into the world, to the very bottom. So you light menorah close to the ground. To signify, we're drawing the line of 36, which again is Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus and the B'Shchem Vav, right? Because when you have the eye in vision, and this is we'll finish off with this, but when you have the vision of eye, when you get to the level what the Gemara says that you have Yishuv Das through the Yain, but doesn't mean that you become an alcoholic. It means that you're able to access your neshama. Like what you're on Purim, what you're trying to do is taste what it means to live like a neshama. That's the goal. So all the mitzvahs, right, are designed. You go from Mikra Megillah, right, to get into the proper mood. You go to Matas of Yonim to get out of yourself. You go to Mishlach Manas to completely get out of yourself, and you get to the Mishnah to be completely unpetty. Be completely to neutralize the conductor, to stop thinking about the visa bills and about the government and about Iran and all these various things. They just put it all aside and just be a neshama for one day and taste it. See what it's like. Because that's the way Kosh Baruch Hu always works. He finds a way to give you a taste of something, like Leil Seder. We tasted it. He drew the light away. Like Chatzot, right, the Lashon explains, he drew the light away. We're back on our own. That's why they're complaining the next day. And that's why by Yom Tov we're still complaining. Why? What happened at Mitzrayim? Well, Mitzrayim, we had a taste of it. It was taken away after that. Kosh Baruch Hu says, now build it for yourself. And that's what Moshe says to the Malachim. That's the goal. The goal is not to live in that level from scratch. The goal is to have tasted it like you guys have. But we can go down to go up. We can build that vision. We're here to build ultimately B'naich Ela Bonaich. Right? We're builders. We're builders of the vision of Ayin. Right? That's the whole goal. That's what Eretz Yisrael is about. So Eretz Yisrael, therefore, is bounded by the Mediterranean on one side. What's the name of the river on the other side?
Yarden, you told me that.
And what does the Yarden stand for?
Nun.
Yarad Nun. Right? This is the border of the Nun Shari Bina. Over here. You come into Eretz Yisrael, you cross the Dalet Amos, you're now entering, big sign. Shouldn't say welcome to Eretz Yisrael. Just say welcome to Israel and to the Nun Shari Bina. This is the place. And this is the reason why the Gemara is makpid to say, at the very beginning, the very first daf, Amud Beis, what does it say? Which cities do you say it on the 15th? What's the criteria? Not just the walled city.
From the days of
Yeshua ben Nun. Yeshua ben Nun. That's why Moshe didn't take us in. Why? Because the Gemara says, because Moshe only got 49 levels of the Nun Shari Bina. The Pri Tzaddik says an unbelievable thing. He says, before Moshe dies, he turns to the Jewish people and says, you can accomplish something that I couldn't accomplish in my lifetime. You can get the 50th. Why? Because the 50th is reserved for Bali Tshuva. Right? I can't be Bali Tshuva. I didn't do a chet. I'm not a person who can do tshuva like that. You can be chazer b'tshuva. You can get the nun shari bina, right? How? By going to Yisrael. So who's going to take you? Yeshua ben Nun, son of Nun. So therefore, only walled cities that go back to his time, not Achashverosh's time, as the Havan Mina speaks out, but because that's what it's all about. It's tied to him in the end. However, Moshe did get it when he died. By Nashika, Nun Shaka, right? He got the Nun, right? How do we know that? Where is he buried? Har Nevo. What's Har Nevo? Nun Bo. At his death. So in Nashika, because he couldn't get through Tshuva, because he couldn't become, so he was sort of zeicha to it, so he got on his death itself, and that was in the Nashika itself. But the Jewish people can do it during their lifetime. But Makom Shabbat Tshuva Omdim, Ein Tzadikim Gemurim Omdim. Right? Why? Because we have access to Nun Shari Bina. That's Purim. That's Purim. And B'ezras Hashem, we should be zeicha to be able to achieve that, especially at this time in history. I mean, Pras is right there on the horizon. The whole world. See what's going on right now? It's Israel. And it's all about now Israel and Pras and Persia. All the world's politics today. First it was just Israel, then Persia came in, right around, smack and permed it right now. They just had a meeting at Netanyahu with Obama talking about the initiatives, and now Iran is reaching out. Right, to try to, offering to you can now take a look at this specific base. These guys, does anyone really believe them? I don't know. Chamberlain can come back with a white paper and say there's no war in our time. I guess they can believe a guy like this in the end. It doesn't make a difference. The point is the hashgacha pratis, right? And the love Nun Shari Bina, we're invincible. We're totally invulnerable. And that's why Mordechai could go back and forth as much as he wanted to. And that's why Moshe could go back and forth. I mean, people take these things for granted. He's killing the Jews, Paro. He puts wild animals in his courtyard so Moshe can't come in. And Moshe and Aaron, especially Moshe, back and forth, but they can't stop him. Mordechai, right? It's driving Haman crazy. He's exterminating the Jewish people. He's exterminating the Jewish people. He's having whatever he wants go his way except one thing. Mordecai comes and goes as he pleases, and he can't do anything about it. It's driving him nuts. And Zeresh comes along and says, well, you know something? It may be your downfall in the end too. As long as Mordechai is the ayin, 70 manas of Marjor, right? You're invincible. You're above Teva. You're no longer affected by the world around you. And it was Mordechai's job and effort and the whole what he's trying to accomplish was to pull everybody up to his level of vision. And through that, achieve the Geula. Unfortunately, the Megillah points out, he was only partially successful. Only successful enough to destroy Haman. But the Megillah ends up by saying he was only Merutza, the Rovechav. Rovechav, just the majority of his brothers. And as a result, the Zohar says that terminated the Geula. It terminated the Geula. We lost the chance to turn the second Beis Hamikdash into the final Beis Hamikdash, and we're still trying to rectify and write the Nun unto this very day. And the final word of Gog and Magog, whatever happens from this point onward, is all about that. The more you turn the Nun, writes it up in your life now, in advance of it, the less you have to go through in the process of transition from this bit of history to the next one.